Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Full Court Press. I'm your host, Michael Lyon, and we're joined today by my friend Connor Groel, who writes articles for Medium, so check him out there. He also hosts his own podcasts, many of which I have appeared on. So welcome, Connor, and are you ready to talk about the NBA?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, do a lot of my own podcasts. This is the first time at least that I can remember, going on someone else's podcast. So very excited to join you here today. A lot of NBA news, even though we're already just a couple days into the season. So excited to kind of talk through it.
Yeah, and excited to have you. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I want to start off because I know with me and Rich's first podcast, we were talking a little bit about like Kevin Durant's legacy, and we had some really like his decision to go to Golden State and how that impacted his career. And I wanted to touch on that with you as well because it's a really like interesting subject. I think we have some pretty different opinions on. So I'll go ahead and open it up by saying I think it was a really bad career decision that negatively impacted his like public image and the way that his career is going to be looked at. I don't think it was productive for him to join a 73-win team that he blew a 3-1 lead to as a superstar in this league. That team was like a 70, arguably the best regular season team in the league. Like before, like ever before they added Kevin Durant, and so that it was just so obvious that they were going to win a championship with that much talent, and I don't think he was given the type of credit he thought he would be given for winning those championships, and I think that was the main decision he decided to leave. So why don't you touch on that and give your opinion?
Yeah, it seems like you've decided to hold on to your bad Kevin Durant takes. I think this is, I mean, obviously I understand where you're coming from, and there's been all kinds of criticism, towards Durant for making that move. Ultimately that comes down to your personal opinion, and, you have the right to kind of weigh down that as you will. But in terms of his legacy, I don't understand how it can be this terrible move you're talking about, because we know that everything is so ring focused. It's kind of how people have narratives of players' careers. And Jordan, regardless of whether he's better than LeBron or not, will always have the 6 rings to 3. And I personally don't think LeBron is going to be getting any more rings in his career. There's a chance he might get one with LA. But that's kind of how we measure some of these great superstars in the game. And Durant was, on this team in Oklahoma City that they were kind of known for being the team that gets close but never really finishes the deal. And they had one kind of breakthrough season back in 2012 where they lost to the Heat in the finals. But it had been, a while removed from that. And coming off a pretty embarrassing 3-1, I think even if he stayed, I don't think they were in much of a position to kind of win championships in the future. So I think this was a good move for him. He moves to, and yeah, the super team, whatever. But he takes these couple years in Golden State. He reaches the NBA Finals all 3 years, and he wins twice. And the only time they don't win is when he's injured. So maybe if they only won one title during this span, or if they, struggled more than they did, it would have looked bad on him. But for those 3 years, they were very dominant. And picking up the 2 rings allows him to kind of check that box and then move on to the Nets and then try to do it without as much help.
Right. Well, the interesting thing to me is that I think I don't hate him for leaving. I think it was a fine decision to leave Oklahoma City. LeBron left Cleveland after like a long time. I think he was there for like 8 or 9 years. Kevin Durant in Oklahoma City. So I think leaving was fine. It's just where he went. Like, don't you think? I think he would have been much better off joining a Brooklyn Nets type situation. I know he was considering the Celtics, not to name drop my favorite team. But like I think he'd be better off going to a situation like that, where it's like a new new team up, a new like situation where he was clearly the best player, where he would clearly like lead a team to a championship, and ultimately I feel like that's what he's trying to find now. Like, he feels like he couldn't do in Golden State. It feels like to me he only went there because of the guarantee, and part of the reason that's such a bad look is his Thunder team was like almost good enough. They probably were good enough to beat that Warriors team. He was part of the reason they couldn't get it done 3 games in a row when they blew a 3-1 lead in that playoffs. And it looks really weak to me to join the competition, your direct competition, especially when just the state of the NBA and the balance that got shifted all in the Golden State Warriors' favor. I don't think we've ever seen title favorites so dominant. So I don't think I think one title in Boston or in Brooklyn or somewhere else where he's the main guy would look a lot, even over 3, 4 years, whatever it is. I think that would be a much better look than winning 2 in Golden State, which will always have kind of a star next to them, knowing that he wasn't the core of that team. He said afterwards, since he left, he said he felt like he was more of an outsider on that team, and he never really was integrated into that culture. So I think that says a lot as to kind of. I don't think it worked out like he thought it was going to work out, and I think he'd be. I mean, obviously, he's a great player, and his career is never going to look that bad. I just think he would be a lot better off compared to where he is now if he joined a different situation.
Yeah, so the thing with Kevin Durant, and to kind of refute this, I mean, yes, he might have been served better if he went to a team like the Nets and won a championship. But I think where the Nets were 3 years ago, they weren't really in a position to compete, and I don't even think the addition of Kevin Durant would have got them any closer to an NBA championship than probably the Thunder were during that kind of 2016 period. Kevin Durant. I mean, yeah, it looks bad, but if you want to win rings, he went to the right place, and I think he won a NBA Finals MVP both of the years they won the championship. So I think there's little doubting that he was the best player on that team, even though there were other great players on that team. I mean, the point you make about him not really fitting into the culture, or feeling part of it. I think Kevin Durant. He kind of went to the Warriors expecting that everyone would embrace him and he would be, the it guy. And that happened to a certain extent. But when you have a team that had already went to back-to-back finals and they had this core with Steph and Clay and Dre and Iggy and Livingston, you have all these guys that had been there, for years. And they had kind of built the winning team themselves. The fans are always going to love those guys, right? Like the Astros, if the Astros went and signed Mike Trout somehow over the offseason, and it's not even a possibility because of, every reason. But if Mike Trout joined the Astros, the Astros fans, their favorite players would still be Altuve and Bregman and all the guys that got them there the first couple times to the World Series. Even though they have the greatest player on the planet, he's not one of the guys that really helped grow that culture. And so, obviously, we would be thrilled to have Mike Trout because he's the best player in baseball, just like Kevin Durant was arguably the best player in the NBA for his Warriors years. But he just, it's just never not going to be the same because he wasn't the guy that kind of led them there in the first place.
Right. I get that. I just think part of the problem is how close they were to winning a like how do you think that Oklahoma City team when he left was capable of winning a championship?
I think it was possible. It was going to be difficult. They took Golden State really close, and at this point the Rockets were really rising in title contenders as well. It's kind of difficult to say. Maybe he was just looking for a change of scenery. Wouldn't blame anybody for leaving Oklahoma Oklahoma City.
As I said, it's not that he left the Thunder. It's just that they were so close to being able to win a championship, and he left them for the biggest team in their way to that goal, and they happen to be already one of the best regular season team, or the best regular season team ever, winning 73 games. So
I
yeah,
want to point out that this is something more of an American concept of this kind of, oh, he's the snake, he left for the biggest rival. Uh, teams, like for instance soccer teams, you'll pretty regularly see guys go from FC Barcelona to Real Madrid or from a Man United to a Man City. It's not like you play for one team, so it's unheard of and it's, terrible for you to go to your rival. It's just kind of this idea, I guess, that they had beat them in the playoffs in the previous year. But at the same point, like, players make decisions for them. They don't make decisions necessarily for the fans, right? So if he thought this was the best way for him to improve his legacy, and maybe you can question it going in, but coming out of the 3 years in Golden State with 3 finals appearances, 2 titles, 2 MVPs, I think it's very difficult to make the argument that it hasn't been anything but a huge positive for him, even if he didn't necessarily love the terms of how he left and how he was kind of viewed by the city.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I think just for me as an NBA fan, I'm never gonna look at those titles and those Finals MVP and be like, man, he earned that in the same way that I think LeBron James earned it in 2016, or the same way that the Dallas Mavericks earned it in 2011, or it's just it's a different type of feeling because they were so heavily expected to win. It would be a letdown to not win, like a major letdown to not win, and then it's like you're barely covering expectations if you win, and that can't be that satisfying, and ultimately I don't feel like it's that impressive.
I mean, let's not act like. I think that Dirk Mavericks team is kind of the last example we have of kind of real, true underdog team. Winning a championship. Maybe the Warriors, their first go around in 2015 when, their first title run, and people thought they were good, but, they kind of blew people out of the water. Let's not act like people don't, create these teams for their legacy all the time. And you can say LeBron's teams were never as huge favorites as the Warriors were in maybe 2017, but he goes to the Heat and he joins up with Dwayne Wade, who's already there, and Chris Bosh, and then he goes back to the Cavs, and it's like, now I'm pulling in Kevin Love and Kyrie, and now I'm going to the Lakers, so I'm going to pull in AD. It's like, KD is just maybe not the guy orchestrating the move, but he's part of a super team, and super teams develop, and it's what people do to stay competitive in a league with so many star players that you kind of have to do it. And, I think it's beneficial in general. Whether or not we love it as fans is something else entirely. But from a player's perspective, dude got himself rings.
Yeah, I don't mind. LeBron went to Miami. I don't mind super teams. LeBron got Chris Bosh and D Wade. They'd all played on different teams the year before. It was high level talent that never played before and they had no depth behind them really. It was just them 3 being top heavy star talent, seeing how it would work out. And they struggled their first year from time to time. They didn't win the championship their first year. They only won 2 out of 4. And then Kevin Durant, just the difference is he's joining a proven commodity. He's joining something that he knows is gonna work, and it's different than just trying to win because he's joining something that he knows wins. And then he's such a momentum he carries a lot of weight himself that it's definitely just gonna push them over the edge. That we've talked about this for a while. I think we're gonna end up agreeing to disagree. Any last comments on this subject?
I mean, I think he's got the rings now, and he gets to go to the Nets and kind of do what we wanted him to do 3 years ago, which is, do it. And he still has Kyrie, but he's kind of being the orchestrator and kind of the leader of that team, at least when he gets back. So I think he has the comfort of a couple rings under his belt, and now he can try to do the thing where he grows the team and turns them into a contender.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him play in Brooklyn too. We'll have to wait a year for his injury. All right, so let's move on. There was a ton. The NBA is just getting started. Right now, every team's played one game. A couple of teams have played two. My Boston Celtics got destroyed by the Philadelphia 76ers. Our lone bright spot was Gordon Hayward scoring 25 points on 8 for 15. So love to see that from Gordon Hayward, who a year removed now from that nasty ankle injury. So excited to see him playing well, but Jaylen Brown not playing like he earned his contract. He also didn't play a lot of minutes. Jason Tatum had 21 and 10, but shot really inefficient. And the biggest story out of Boston was Kemba Walker going 4 for 18 in the Boston Celtics opener to forget. Well, on the other end, Ben Simmons played really well. Philly looked good, but looking at the stat line, I think more of the bigger story in this game is Kemba Walker specifically struggling pretty big, and I think that's what caused the Celtics to lose. Thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I think the Sixers probably more of an established team as far as Ben Simmons, Embiid, Harris having all played with each other last year. The Celtics are a little more trying to throw it together with Kemba Walker and kind of switch things up. And I think we thought the Sixers were probably going to be a better team in the first place, and they did look very good. As far as the Celtics are concerned, obviously not going as they planned, but it's good to see Gordon Hayward play well. Hopefully, he can kind of return to near to where he was before the big injury. Not sure if he's ever going to get fully back, but good to see him actually having a good performance. And yeah, for the rest of the team, struggles. Jaylen Brown was in foul trouble for most of this game. And I do think they kind of overpaid him a little bit. I wasn't really sold on his contract. I guess as for the rest of it, just, trying to find a way to put all the pieces together, and I think it'll probably develop, and it'll look a little better over the course of the regular season. I don't want to take too much away from one bad Kemp performance, although I do think he's going to have to step up really big and be the leader of this team, and it's something I think he's capable of doing. Maybe just not in this first go round against the Sixers.
Yeah, he's it's a red flag a little bit. Nothing that proves he's gonna have a bad year or he's not gonna fit in Boston or anything like that. I think it's much too early to go to those kind of assumptions. I am a little bit worried. Not something you love to see from your new star player. I think we're gonna have some time. I think it will take some adjusting, especially because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are adjusting to their bigger roles as well. So this offense and this whole team is going to take a little bit of gelling time, I think, which is reasonable. Philly looked good, and they're more of a proven commodity for sure. Ben Simmons, really good. He didn't shoot any threes. I'm still waiting on on him to carry over that preseason three. But
Didn't need to.
yeah, it didn't need to today. That's going to be something to watch throughout this whole year, though, is his shot development. And Joel Embiid's health, I think, will play a lot into how the 76ers do. Yeah, so that was a big game. Rough start for my Celtics, but there's plenty of time to right the ship. Speaking of the Celtics, our big off-season departure, Kyrie Irving, looked pretty good, dropping 50 points against the Minnesota Timberwolves in an overtime loss, though. Karl Anthony Towns carrying Minnesota with 36 points. That was a huge game in which Kyrie missed the game-winning shot in overtime, and yeah, that was really fun because he put on a show for Brooklyn. Honestly, I'm happy for him. It looks like he's having a lot of fun playing in Brooklyn. I saw that quote after the game that said like I'm just a kid from Jersey, doing the thing I love in front of all the fans and all that. So happy for him in that regard. It looks like it could be a good year for him in Brooklyn, but where was the help? This was supposed to be a deep Brooklyn Nets team last year.
Yeah. So obviously a great performance from Kyrie Irving, and it feels like, at least for him, he's in a much better situation this time around. Maybe not quite as much pressure getting out of Boston, and also with Kevin Durant being out presumably for this entire season. They don't have necessarily the title expectations this year, so he's going to be able to find his fit and kind of really lead this team this season. Still think they should easily be a playoff team. And dropping the 50, I mean, if you were to take this after just one game, the Kyrie for Kemba swap is, I mean, one threw up 12 and the other threw up 50. Not looking too great for the Celtics, although I still think Kemba will ultimately be a better fit there. But yeah, I mean, not a ton of help from the Nets, and more beyond that, I just think a really solid performance from the Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns in particular having a big game, even beyond the 36 points, 14 rebounds, 3 steals, 3 blocks. Really huge performance from him. And again with the Nets, I think he's still a very solid team, and should just really be happy to see Kyrie Irving have a huge performance. Beyond just the wins and losses, I think that's kind of a defining game for him to just say, like, everybody calm down, I'm here, and I'll be in control of the ship this season.
Yeah, I agree about the Nets. I will say about the Timberwolves. Do you think? I think it was a pretty big game for Minnesota. Andrew Wiggins had some clutch buckets. He's had a lot of criticism for not living up to expectations so far in his career. This Minnesota team has like pretty much fallen off the radar in the Western Conference, and people kind of assume that they're not going to be good anymore. They were a rising team with Jimmy Butler and Karl Anthony Towns, but Karl Anthony Towns is a really, really good player. If you count Anthony Davis as a power forward and Karl Anthony Towns as a center, he might be the best center in the NBA, or argument for it. Does this say anything about Minnesota being able to compete with better teams, or is it just kind of an anomaly, and they're gonna go back to struggling in the Western Conference?
Yeah, I mean, first Andrew Wiggins, yeah, maybe he hit some big shots. He's still at 21 points on 27 shots, so let's not go crazy on the Wiggins train. I think this is not a unique opinion, but I think he's a highly overrated player. For me, I think the Timberwolves, the thing with playing in the Western Conference, it's just really just crazy, because the Timberwolves would be probably, I think, a playoff team in the Eastern Conference. The Timberwolves are by no means a bad team. They got some good pieces. I like Covington and Jeff Teague, and they got a couple of nice pieces on the bench as well. We'll see how Jarrett Culver does in his rookie season. But even if they outperform expectations, it's not going to be enough to get them into the postseason. So yeah, I think this is a team that we can see winning 35, 40 games. Maybe even a little more, although I doubt it just because of all the prime Western Conference competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, in reality, like, this is a 35-40 win team going up against, like, a 45 win team. Like, it's not, these teams aren't terribly far apart in expectations, I don't think.
Yeah, no, it is the thing about the West. I was watching Oklahoma City, who lost to Utah by 5 points, and Oklahoma City was winning for a large period of that game, and they look like a team that might make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference too.
It's just like, I don't think the Hornets Rockets would have had a chance in that game, and that's a East team that's like in a relatively similar position just in their conference, right?
Right. Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, similar opinion in terms of like where the Timberwolves are in the West, and it's just unfortunate for them that they have such high competition, I guess. So let's move on to, I know you're a Houston Rockets fan from Houston. They lost a pretty tight one against Milwaukee last night. They were in control for a lot of that game. Westbrook played pretty well, probably the best on that team at least. Well, Harden struggled very poorly, shooting 2 for 13 from the field. Still ended up with 19 points because of free throws in classic Harden style. But Giannis dropped a triple-double with 30 points, and big opening night win for the Bucks in Houston. What did you think that game says about the Rockets to start the year?
Yeah, I think this is just about the Rockets team we expected. The thing with James Harden's game, it's so funny with all his dribble moves and step backs and trying to do whatever he can to draw fouls and hoist up threes. And by the way, he had at one point in the first quarter, he had 8 points on no made shots. So it was just a very Harden-esque performance. And the shots weren't necessarily driving for him in the first game. But if you really think about James Harden performances, when the shots aren't falling, it just kind of looks ridiculous. Because just the eye test says, what is this guy doing? He looks crazy. And he's just kind of been redeemed by the fact that, despite the fact that he plays differently than basically any other player we've ever seen, it has just been so effective for him. So what we saw from Harden, we saw him miss a ton of shots, but we still saw him get to the line for 14 free throws. We saw him have 14 assists, a lot of great passes in there. So I'm not really worried about James. I think Westbrook had kind of a slow start as well. He only had 5 points in the first half. But by the time the second half came around, he was really the only guy that was able to do much of anything for the team as the Bucks kind of climbed back from a big deficit. I like the way they staggered Harden and Westbrook. I like that we saw some flashes of some really good chemistry between them. Ultimately, this was kind of a rougher game for some of the more established players like Harden, like Eric Gordon. But some big guys, off the bench, had some good minutes from Ben McLemore, had some good minutes from Tyson Chandler. Ultimately, the Rockets started out the game shooting very hot, and they took a big lead. And then when they cooled down, the Bucks came right back at them. Ultimately, I think pretty much what we would have expected. The Rockets are known for playing this kind of swingy style, and they lose the first game, but I think there's a lot of positives to take away from this game, just being a Rockets fan in general.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about the Rockets at all. Harden's definitely gonna bounce back. The interesting thing about Harden is that it seems like he has a baseline of like 15 points just from free throws. That's part of the reason it seems to me he averaged so many points last year is because like the 36 points. Even his bad games where he would shoot 2 for 13 or whatever it is, it didn't really matter. He would have like a inflation with those free throws, and his points would never be that low. I think so. I'm not worried about him. As you said, it looks bad when they're not going in, but he's proven on such a high volume for so long now that we can be pretty confident he's gonna get back into form. Just a bad game. Russell Westbrook. Yeah, go ahead.
This was a kind of a strange game for Harden because he picked up 5 offensive fouls in this game. He picked up 4 in the first half alone. So I think it kind of forced him to maybe change his play style a little bit. He was out for portions. He still played 36 minutes, so I guess not really too worried on that from D'Antoni's perspective. But maybe it kind of forced him to rethink the way he played a little bit. It seemed in the second half he wasn't being near as aggressive driving towards the basket. He had 10 free throw attempts in the first quarter, finished the game with only 14. And certainly that's not a situation we expect to see very often. It was just the second time in his career he picked up 4 fouls in the first half of a game. And also playing against a team that I think will probably win more games in the regular season than any other team in the league, and was certainly what they were able to do last year. So Greek Freak looked great. Even made a couple threes. He had one air ball, but made up for it with a couple threes. Greek Freak even fouled out of this game with about 5 minutes left, but Milwaukee was still able to hold on and get the win. And overall, I think Milwaukee, a deeper team and showing nice additions. Korver was pretty good. Pat Connaughton, I guess he's not an addition, but he looked pretty good in his role. Wes Matthews as well. Again, just a very solid team. This could easily be an NBA Finals type matchup.
Yeah, maybe a bigger role for Connaughton this year was like Brogdon moving out and things like that.
Yeah.
I agree, and I agree about Milwaukee in the regular season. I think they're in line for a really good regular season because a lot of continuity from their 61 team from last year and playing in the weaker Eastern Conference, so they're gonna have more games against weaker teams. I think they're in line for an excellent regular season, as should Houston as well. Russell Westbrook was really. I like that he was 3 for 7 from three. Maybe his percentages are gonna spike up. One of them was a bank, but we'll give it to him.
I wouldn't bet on him being a 40% shooter, but I think he'll be a little better than last year because he won't have all the pressure on him.
Yeah, and I saw spurts of chemistry between him and Harden too. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that play out throughout the rest of the year. Other game last night, the big game was the Warriors and the Clippers. The Clippers continue to assert their dominance at the beginning of this year with 2 big wins to open the season, one against the Lakers, one against the Warriors now. 2 of the better teams in the league. Pretty big statement. They scored 141 points with nobody on their team scoring more than 22, which is pretty interesting to see. A really well-balanced team, really deep. They play together. They play with a lot of energy. They're really well coached. I'm really, really impressed with what we've seen from the Clippers so far this season. And the Warriors, a little bit to be expected with such a young team trying to figure things out. And they're trying to incorporate their new pieces, D'Angelo Russell being the biggest one. And they're just they don't have the same expectations this year. So seeing them, maybe they shouldn't have lost so poorly. They shouldn't have gotten dominated so thoroughly. But in general, I would say not too surprising to see them lose to this Clippers team who has been very, very impressive to start the year.
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers, they don't even have Paul George yet. So this team could be, we don't even know how good they could be. They look incredible at the moment. Just everybody. Kawhi looked good. Kawhi only even needed to play 21 minutes in this game. Finished with a career high in assists with 9 in a game, so good for him. But yeah, just more of what we've seen from the Clippers. They get just as much production from their bench as they do from their starters. When you have Lou Williams and Harrell coming off giving you 40 in this game, and honestly, they'll probably get you 35 a night just between them. Everybody very efficient. The team shoots 62% from the field and 56% from 3. So part of that is, you're probably not going to shoot 56% from 3 every game. But still, they took a commanding control this one early, 14-0. I don't think the Warriors ever got it to below maybe 8 points. On the Warriors side, we saw a couple flashes from D'Angelo Russell, which was very exciting. He scored the Warriors' first 10 points of the game in very Steph Curry-like fashion. Curry struggled a little bit shooting the deep ball, but still, he looked solid overall, but just not a ton of help from him at all. It looked like you have to understand the Warriors are very banged up. Obviously, Clay probably won't even play this season is what we're hearing now. But even beyond that, I think it'll be really big for them to get Willie Cauley-Stein back from injury. And then in this game, Draymond Green left with an injury. Kevon Looney left with an injury. So really, it was just Steph Curry and D'Angelo Russell. And, Yeah, that's about their entire team at this point. Glenn Robinson is starting for them. I mean, their bench, they probably have the worst bench in the league, not exaggerating. They at this point, they just look like a team that's so outmatched by a team like the Clippers, particularly in depth. And I think it'll get a little bit better when Cauley Stein returns, but really this is a team that's super young. They look like they can't really defend at all. Warriors, I still think they'll probably sneak into one of the last couple playoff spots, but this was not a good showing from them at all.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a different look for them. All of a sudden, like us as fans, you don't even recognize some of the players coming in off their bench. They look a lot less intimidating than they have in years past. And it's a good point about the Clippers. Like they're adding Paul George to this team that already beat two of the top teams in the NBA and looks pretty unstoppable. And they're adding a last year MVP candidate to this. I'm going to be really excited to see the Clippers with Paul George and see how he fits into this whole system. I think it's beautiful what they do off their bench, bringing in like they start like Zubac and Patterson and then like Harrell and or Lou Will come off the bench and they like play even more minutes than some of the starters do, and they just have like these like they're so deep they can bring in these like waves of talent and different like systems that like work on a pretty consistent basis, and they'll wear you down, they'll like target your bench because they're deep and they can. They over a 7-game series. I know it's only been 2 games, but the Clippers were my finals predictions going into the season, and as of right now, it's just really, really hard for me to see anybody putting together enough talent and depth to beat them over a 7-game series in the playoffs, and I just think they look really, really strong right now. And it was claimed to be a year of like parity and like anybody could win in the NBA, which it still is. But I think the Clippers have taken an early lead in terms of dominance and being the established team to beat or team to look out for in the NBA.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't want to, go crazy or anything with calling them title contenders. Clearly a very outmatched Golden State Warriors team tonight, and when Looney and Green are out with injury, Steph Curry is literally the only member of last year's rotation that is playing for the team. They had a couple end of the bench guys, but even like they have guys like Marquise Chris is playing big minutes for this team. Jordan Poole is playing big minutes for this team. Eric Pascal, really just a lot of young Villanova guys and Michigan guys that we've seen in the Final Four. But yeah, as far as the Clippers are concerned, they have it exactly what you were saying. They can bring in different units that can be very successful. Zubac had an unbelievable game in just 18 minutes. He had 16 points and 10 boards on just 5 shots. And he's not even, one of the go-to bigs necessarily on this team. Harrell, again, is a beast. Patrick Patterson is a beast. Pat Beverly had an incredible defensive game, and it's, 5 steals. His scoring output is never going to shock you, but he is a very crucial member of that team. And when Beverly lines up with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, I have no idea how other teams are expected to score against that trio. So obviously the Clippers to me. And in the preseason, I did go Clippers over the Bucks in the finals. And after last night's games, I feel very happy with that.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. Before that, let's just run through a couple of quick items, and then we can compare our finals predictions after that. So Kings got kind of blown out by the Suns. You think I know the Kings were competing for a playoff spot last year. You think that's red flag for the Kings, good sign for the future of the Suns, or just meaningless beginning of season game?
Yes and yes. Wow, not a good look
for anybody that beat up by the Suns,
Right.
DeAndre Ayton has now been suspended 25 games since that happened. So we'll see. Obviously, he's going to appeal, and we'll see if that gets reduced at all. I still don't have very high hopes at all this season for the Suns, but it was really fun for them to be at top of the West for one day with their point differential. They were literally number one, and it was kind of hilarious. They bring in, again, good pieces, I guess, Rubio and Saric and whatnot, and they have a bunch of young guys. But yeah, I mean, we're not expecting anything really more from the Suns. And I really have no idea what the path forward is for the Suns.
Yeah.
As far as the Kings are concerned, yeah, I don't know. Buddy Hield has a good game. But really, I guess De'Aaron Fox struggled a bit. But yeah, just I don't know, man. When you lose by 30 to the Suns, it's not a good feeling.
Bad look. Yeah. Good point about DeAndre Ayton's suspension too. Anti-drug policy violation. I don't know what's up with that. We'll see if he gets any time taken off. But regardless, I don't see the Suns going anywhere this year.
I would love to see the NBA allow the Suns to get as roided up as possible to see if they can make the playoffs.
This is their route to getting a few wins.
That'd be a really great NBA storyline. It's like, let's take the worst team in the league and just turn them into the Monstars and see what happens.
Yeah, no, that would be funny. I don't think the Suns they might have added enough pieces to beat a couple mediocre teams this year. We'll see. But yeah, a bad look for the Kings. We'll see if it carries over until a lot of the big chunks of their regular season.
Can I shout out the third game that happened last night? Because I think we focus on Bucks Rockets and Clippers Warriors, and obviously with good reason. But Trae Young looks like a beast.
Yeah, what did he score 36 last night? Is that right?
Routinely 38.
38.
Routinely hitting shots, relatively close to a triple double as well. From the logo, I mean, this guy has Curry-like range, and maybe even more so. At the very least, it feels like he's willing to take shots in regular season action that are even a little deep that Curry can make them, but he wouldn't choose to take them. But Trae Young is just a firecracker waiting to explode. Again, he went off with a big win for the Pistons. The Hawks are one of the really, really sneaky potential playoff spots in the East. I'm not sure if they're quite ready yet, but if Trae Young really turns into an all-star, and I do think he'll be an all-star this season, there are enough pieces there with DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish and John Collins, that Herder as well, that these guys could really be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference in the years to come. I think 2 or 3 years down the line, these guys are going to be really good.
Yeah, you know what? They did it against a Pistons team that surprisingly beat the Indiana Pacers on opening night as well.
Yeah, this is not a bad Pistons team. I think this Pistons team is also one of those teams that'll be one of the last playoff spots in the East. They might even be competing the Hawks and the Pistons by the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the Hawks maybe making a run. If Trae Young can play like this, just based on not just this game alone, but his Trae Young's development in terms of building off of what he his progress last year and how well he played last year, and if he can turn it into semi-regular games like this, they're not going to be an easy team to beat. And yeah, the Pistons probably are consensus around like the 8 seed, bottom tier playoff team in the East. Atlanta might have something to say about sneaking into the bottom of the East playoff race. So that's good.
Why not? It'll only take 32 wins.
Yeah.
Maybe 38. But yeah, come on.
Yeah. The West is still pretty dominant, more so than last year, even with Kawhi going to LA. Last game, I think we haven't really touched on. Worth mentioning. Denver beat Portland in a matchup of two probable Western Conference playoff teams. I was pretty low on Denver going into the year. I don't think they have enough top heavy talent. But Jokic had 20 and 13, and they're deep, and they showed why they're deep. Varane had 19, Millsap had 11, Murray had 14, Torrey Craig had 10, so everybody getting in on the action. And then Damian Lillard had 32 points and 8 assists on the other end. Hassan Whiteside making a pretty noticeable debut with 19 rebounds, 16 points in 26 minutes. Um, any impressions from this game compared to preseason expectations?
Not particularly. I'm definitely higher on the Nuggets than you are. I think they're obviously a better regular season team than a playoff team. I like the Nuggets to finish ballpark somewhere around 4 in the West. And out of the 7 teams in the Western Conference that we think are quote-unquote locks, I guess the Warriors are kind of out of that group of 7 now at this point in time.
Right.
But I think, if you want to call it a group of 6, I think they're all very close, but I think the Trailblazers are probably my 6th. So I think these teams know each other very well. They play each other. A close game, as expected. Not too much in terms of great takeaways, but I think both these teams are obviously going to be pretty competitive.
Yeah. I've been low on the Nuggets, and I had them at 7 seed going into the year. I'm not going to change based on this game, but I will say beating a quality team like Portland has me sweating a little bit. And I'm excited to see if Hassan Whiteside can contribute on a consistent basis, because he looked like he could be a rising star type player for a little bit in Miami, and then kind of fell off a cliff, and like people stopped talking about him, and he stopped putting in minutes, and there was talk about his work ethic and everything. But I'm happy for him to have a fresh start in Portland, and it looks like he could make something out of it.
Yeah, and I wasn't on one of your early shows. I didn't get a chance to give my kind of conference predictions. I'm not going to go too deep into the East because, to be honest, I don't think we really care too much. I've got the top maybe 4 teams, and as far as that goes, I think Bucks and Sixers are going to lead the way with no one else able to really challenge them, at least for the top 2 spots. And then we get into the mix of the Bostons and the Indianas and the Torontos of the world. But as far as the West goes, I am number 1 Clippers, number 2 Rockets, number 3 Lakers, and then the Nuggets, the Jazz. We'll swap the Blazers at 6, give the Warriors 7, and then number 8. I'm sure you are quite aware I have made bets on the Pelicans making the playoffs. And obviously a huge hit to that was taken with Zion going to miss the first 6 weeks or so of the season. But I'm not someone to go back on my word. So I'll flip the Blazers and Warriors to give the Blazers the 6. But I'm going to keep the Pelicans at 8. I think they have a lot of potential, and I think they're going to be better than people think they are, although there are plenty of teams like the Spurs and like the Kings, if they can learn to beat the Suns, that can kind of play in that conversation as well.
Right. I admire the consistency. And yeah, they looked okay in their debut against the Raptors too. The Pelicans did. But there's definitely some room to grow for them. I have as I've said in the previous podcast, I have San Antonio in that 8th spot. With pretty similar order as you, actually, not terribly different. Denver probably being the biggest difference, because I had them at 7, and then I had Houston at number 1 instead of the Clippers. Although based on the way the Clippers are playing now and how deep they are, but we'll see if that one holds true. So yeah, let's as we wrap this up, let's go for we can talk about different finals predictions because I have Boston coming out of the East as the 3 seed.
Wow.
Yeah, as the 3
Okay.
seed.
I can
Uh,
buy him as a 3 seed.
yeah, I have them making a run, and I'm biased because I'm a Celtics fan, but I do truly believe in this team. I'm not very scared of Philadelphia until Ben Simmons develops a jump shot. There's a lot of uncertainty still in terms of player development because there's so many young players on both these teams. Joel Embiid's health is a question mark. Gordon Hayward's recovery is still a question mark, although he played well in that first game. Milwaukee lost a couple pieces in Brogdon and Mirotic. I think that'll come back to bite them, but assuming Boston's development, young player development, and health goes in a probable or in a favorable way for the Celtics, I think they can make a run and go to the finals. And then we're in agreement on the Clippers making the finals from the West. We talked about how dominant they are earlier, and I just can't see anybody stopping them. So probably not a bunch of talking points there. But Boston versus you had Milwaukee is a pretty big difference.
Yeah, and just kind of what makes you think after the Bucks really handily beat the Celtics in 5 last year, that the Bucks with a basically similar roster and the Celtics, as well as a similar roster, just kind of swapping the point guards. What makes you think the Celtics are going to be able to make a run, especially if you think they're only going to be in the 3 season regular season?
Right. We can talk about these matchups a little bit. So you have we can focus on Milwaukee because you have them coming out of the East and not Philly. I think Giannis can't shoot the 3 still. That limited them. I liked the way we played defense against Giannis in the playoffs, at least in Game 1 last year. That our Celtics team had a flurry of issues, but we did this thing where we would basically the top of the key we'd let him have space and he could shoot that 3 if he wanted it, and then we'd have like 3 players lined up around the free throw line, trying to play defense on him to limit him like that so he couldn't just drive right into the paint. And I don't know. I trust Brad Stevens enough. We're talking about his coaching. I still trust him as a really good coach. I think last year was a bit of a unique situation in terms of Kyrie like separating himself from the team because of the death of his grandfather and all that, and maybe Brad Stevens didn't handle Gordon Hayward coming off his injury as well as he should have, which is fair criticism. But those seem like things of the past to me, and I would like to think that Brad Stevens is going to get back to the level of coaching that he had when Boston made that good playoff run in 2017. That optimism mixed with our capability to slow Giannis down enough, where I think we can just develop enough on offense with our young players, and put together a really good offensive team that can compete and top Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to the emergence of Tatum and Jaylen Brown for me.
Right.
I think we know what we're going to get from Kemba. He's more established. And I think Gordon Hayward's going to be solid, but I don't think he's going to be great. And I don't see, honestly, a ton of great bench pieces for the Celtics. I really love Carson Edwards, so maybe he can, go nuts for 30 in a game, which he seems like he's able to do after the preseason performance. But yeah, for these young guys, I think the Celtics have based so much of their, I don't want to call it a rebuilding plan because they never really sucked, but this kind of retooling plan around these young guys, and obviously they just paid Jaylen Brown. And I think at some point, if the Celtics are going to win a title, and I think they have, I don't love their chances of doing so, but I think if they're going to make it happen, they're going to need these young guys to really, really become all-star and quality players. And I know they want to see Jason Tatum as their Kobe-like closer.
Yeah, no, I really agree that this is all very dependent on these players really, and I like developing into like all-star type players. I fully accept that, and I hope it comes true. these are like internal hopes and expectations for what the places these players can go. I think we gave ourselves the best. We're sticking with this core that can definitely, at the minimum, be competitive. And so I think we're giving ourselves the best chance to put together this good core for at least the next few years and see what we can do with it. I'm optimistic. Criticism is fair. We're going in. We're not going in as the favorites, or a lot lower expectations than last year even.
Yeah, I agree that they have their guys, and good on them for sticking with them. I just think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum really emerged for me in that playoffs 2 years ago. But last season, it felt like we didn't really see any growth from either of them.
There was
so
regression.
I'm a little worried.
Yeah, no, there was regression. I completely agree. But last year was a year to forget in all aspects for Boston. So maybe it's me just being a fan, but I'm thinking that we can just shut the door on that and kind of rebuild and start something new and better.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah. All right. So we've been going at this for about an hour. Covered all the main points. Really excited to have the NBA back and running. Really excited to see all these new players on their new teams. And it's been great to have you on the show. Check out Connor at Connor Groel Sports. He's on...
Yeah, Connor Groel Sports is the podcast on everything. Wherever you listen to podcasts, search it up. And then at Connor Groel on Twitter and at Connor Groel on Medium for the writing. Good being on the show, Michael, and I'm sure we'll be on each other's podcasts a few times as we get further into these NFL and NBA season.
Yeah, it's been great to have you on here as I start my new podcast doing the NBA, and I'm sure I'll be back on yours as well. So thanks for coming, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
And goodbye, YouTube and Spotify.
See ya.